a young man takes on his school's infamous dirty deeds, a series of risky challenges that he intends to be the first to complete to win the heart of his friend's sister. One day, the students of West Valley High gather to welcome their annual homecoming weekend. As the host, Jen warmly introduces the school's senior class president, Dan Lawton, to lead the unveiling of the homecoming banner. Senior student Zach and his friends set up their camera and watch with anticipation. The moment the banner is uncovered, everyone gasps in disbelief, seeing that it is completely vandalized. The school's vice principal, Mr. Fuchs, spots Zach laughing with his friends and becomes certain that it was one of his pranks. Frustrated, the man steps off the stage and instructs him to come to his office. There, he confronts the playful teen about his lack of respect toward authority, but he shows no hint of remorse. Instead, he feigns deafness, ignoring the older man's words completely. Meanwhile, Officer Dill and his fellow policemen gather the jocks. They ask for their help to stop anyone from attempting the infamous West High legend, the Dirty Deeds, 10 risky challenges that must be completed the night before homecoming. Though Dan agrees, his sarcastic behavior makes it clear that they aren't taking the request to heart. To end it, he delivers a final insult to the group before leaving. Back in the office, the vice principal demands that Zach admit to vandalizing the banner, but the student dodges the blame with jokes. Realizing that his interrogation is ineffective, he dismisses him with a warning. Outside, the troublemaker's smart and beautiful classmate, Meg, awaits him. She pleads with Zach not to drag her brother Kyle into any more of his pranks, as she's concerned that it would only get him in trouble. Weak to his crush's request, he quickly agrees. On her way back to class, Meg encounters Dan and his fellow jocks. He tries to flirt with her, but she quickly shuts him down, reminding him that he's taken. Later that afternoon, while Kyle is busy with his part-time maintenance job at the track field, the jocks interrupt him. They invite him to be part of their team, but he must run a lap first to test his stamina. Eager, the teen immediately accepts it. Once he proudly finishes the lap, he accepts the drink the group offered him and chugs it down. When he realizes it's urine, he spits it out while the jocks burst into laughter as they leave him humiliated. Zach sees the situation and asks the bullied fellow if he wants him to take revenge. The teen, unyielding with pride, insists that he can fend for himself before storming off. During lunch, the students gossip about the dirty deeds, recalling that Duncan Rhyme, a former West High student, was the only one to complete the list, but vanished after. Suddenly, Kyle bravely marches to the jocks' table, demanding why the so-called leader never attempted to do the dirty deeds. Boldly, he declares that he'll be doing it himself. Amused, Dan welcomes the challenge and dares the teen to prove himself. By the end of the school day, Meg finds Zach and begs him to stop her brother. Sadly, he admits to her he can't do anything to stop Kyle as he's determined to finish it. This makes her disappointed, prompting her to leave abruptly. On the other hand, Dan and his fellow jocks head to a storage room, excitedly cracking open an old locker to retrieve the list of the dirty deeds. That evening, when Kyle arrives at the diner, Meg approaches him and begs him to reconsider his decision. Still, her younger brother decides to complete the challenge, believing his tormentors will leave him alone afterward. Before he can approach Dan and retrieve the list, Zach appears suddenly. He then announces that he'll be doing the challenge instead of Meg's brother, bringing up the rule that seniors get priority. The head jock, although irritated, agrees to the change of plans. As the new challenger retrieves the list, Kyle leaves, feeling like his accomplice made him look like a loser. Out of guilt, Meg explains that she didn't intend for the senior to do the challenge, but he assures her that it was the only way to free her brother from the bullies. Then, he reveals that Dan's reason for targeting Kyle is his payback to her because she's the only girl in school he can't have his way with. As the crowd cheers, the teen faces the head jock to receive the first deed. He is reminded of the rule that he must accomplish all the challenges by the start of the homecoming rally, giving him only 12 hours to do so. In no time, Dan informs him that the initial risky deed is to down a beer in front of a cop. Reluctant at first, Zach outsmarts him by pouring the beer into a plastic cup to conceal it, infuriating the bully. In an instant, the students gather by the window as he comes up to Officer Dill, who is inside the diner. He strikes up a conversation with the older man to mask his real intentions, and immediately chugs down the drink. After, he lets out a burp and tells the scowling policeman that it was a good cup of coffee before walking away. Soon, he returns to Dan for the second deed, to which the young man reveals he must punch the toughest kid in town. He specifies that it must be J.D. Riplock, a tall and muscular student known for his temper. Despite feeling uneasy, Zach drives off, determined to look for the hot-headed teen. Not long after, he spots his target in the middle of a fight in the street. Though nervous, he interrupts the scene by striking his rival with a single punch, stunning everyone, including J.D. himself. Quickly, the teen bolts back behind the wheel and speeds off the scene. In no time, Zach returns to Dan at the diner for the third deed. The head jock, thrilled by the next challenge, hands him the envelope. Upon unfolding it, the challenger feels humiliated when he learns that he must shut himself in the supermarket bathroom and use a loaf of bread to please himself. Despite this, he accepts the challenge and decides to head to his next destination. At the supermarket, the challenger sneakily grabs a loaf of bread from the shelves and hides it under his jacket before rushing to the bathroom. As he performs the deed, he's unaware that a security guard is watching him through the surveillance camera. Shortly, the clueless Zach comes out and attempts to return the loaf, but the security guard confronts him. Thinking that he is caught, he slowly turns around, but he's surprised at the officer's unexpected reaction. The man in uniform expresses his delight that someone is trying the dirty deeds again, so he wishes him good luck. Right after, Zach rejoins the cheering crowd at the diner to find out the fourth deed. Dan, still smug but visibly rattled that the teen is succeeding, orders him to drag the huge balloon leprechaun from a used car lot all the way to school. The challenger gladly accepts the task and mocks the head jock's demeanor before leaving the scene. Arriving at his destination, Zach immediately comes up with a plan to chain the balloon to his car to quicken the process. Unfortunately, his plan fails when it deflates after a streetlight pole pokes through it. As he thinks of a way to fix it, Kyle appears and expresses his frustration that his schoolmate took the responsibility of completing the deeds. Regardless, he helps his friend finish his task. Together, they drag the balloon to the school's track, tinkering with the sprinklers to release hot air instead of water to help inflate it back up. On the other hand, the jocks grow impatient after not hearing anything from Zach. This prompts Dan to seize the moment, declaring to everyone that the challenger has failed the challenge. Just then, the crowd cheers when they see that the leprechaun balloon is slowly lifting into the sky. In contrast to the cheering crowd, the head jock loses his spirits from the humiliation. Soon, the challenger returns to the diner, and he disturbs Dan and his girlfriend's intimate moment to take on the fifth deed. For the fifth challenge, Zach and his friend Stash head to a funeral home to search for a body they will steal. Eventually, they choose a John Doe, as he's the only one without an identity or a funeral service. On their way to school, Officer Dills sees their reckless driving and demands they pull over. The cop lectures the pair about their speeding, oblivious to the body in the car. Just then, he spots the strange passenger slumped in the back. Thinking fast, the two fabricate a story that it's Stash's drunk uncle whom they'll have to drive home after passing out from intoxication. Luckily, the police officer buys their excuse and lets them off with only a warning. Upon arriving at school, they position the corpse on the West High Viking monument, impressing the goth students who were watching them. Since he's done with the fifth task, he approaches Dan once again to claim the sixth deed. He finds through the note that he must bring back the signed lingerie of a former homecoming queen. With determination and support from the crowd, he turns to start the challenge. Throughout the next few hours, the teen contacts and visits the past homecoming queens, only to get turned down at every attempt. Just as he's losing hope, one of the jocks calls him, pretending to have a supposed lead. Taking the bait, he heads to the address only to find an empty lot. He grows even more frustrated when he suddenly feels the urgency to urinate. Delighted that there's a nearby hotel, he crosses the street and heads in. Inside the hotel's bar, Zach finds out that only customers are allowed to use the bathroom, so he's left with no other option but to purchase a drink. After relieving himself, he slumps over the counter and consumes his drink in silence, feeling defeated. A woman sitting next to him notices him and strikes up a conversation to make him feel better. Hearing his story, she reveals that she is Rachel Buff, the homecoming queen from 1999. Pleased at her revelation, Zach wastes no time and asks for her help with the task. The woman accepts without hesitation, so they quickly head to the bathroom. There, with the teen's assistance, She slips him her undergarment, scrawls her signature across it, and hypes him for completing half of the deeds. Proud that another challenge is off the list, he confidently waves the prize to Dan at the diner. As proof of the accomplishment, he shows him a video greeting he made with Rachel. Irritated that he succeeded again, the head jock shoves him the 7th deed and declares that he'll fail this time. Nevertheless, Zach persists. But when he's about to drive away, he discovers that the jocks had slashed his tires. With no other choice, he drags himself to Meg's house and asks to borrow her car. She declines at first, but soon gives in when she sees how desperate and hopeless he looks. Against her better judgment, she accompanies him to his destination at a private property and wishes him good luck. While Victor Rasdale, a strict policeman, sleeps soundly, Zach sneaks inside. Carefully, he steals the man's prosthetic leg to complete the task. Just as he's about to escape, a glass hidden inside the leg slips and crashes to the floor, causing the policeman to bolt upright. The anxious teen quickly ducks behind a couch, and the policeman threatens him if he doesn't surrender himself. He considers surrendering, but thankfully, Meg, who's watching by the window, catches Victor's attention by banging on the glass. In a bold, desperate distraction, she flashes him, giving the friend the chance to escape. Breathless, Zach makes it out and immediately expresses his gratitude towards her. Ecstatic at the turn of events, Meg decides to hand him the car keys so he can accomplish the rest of the challenge before parting ways. On his way to the car, Dan ambushes him. As he writhes in pain, the bully throws him the 8th deed before letting JD take his revenge. Fortunately, Mullet, a homeless man that Zach befriended, saves him just in time. Taking the chance, the teen drives off to a luxurious private party to fulfill the next challenge of stealing an expensive car. When the crowd settles, he reaches for the key box but finds it locked. Coincidentally, he finds a uniform left at a stand and uses it to disguise himself as a valet. Moments later, a wealthy man, Vincent Scarno, arrives and hands over his car keys to Zach, allowing him to race out of the event. Soon after, Meg returns home, only to find Kyle playing cards with Vincent, who tracked her down after Zach left her vehicle at the club. Calm but cold, the man warns that if the teen fails to return his Ferrari, her brother will pay the price. Meanwhile, Zach stuns Dan and the crowd back at the diner by pulling up in an expensive car, completing the 8th deed. The teen reveals the bully's antics of sabotaging him, ultimately disappointing his girlfriend Jen, who wants a fair game. She then hands the 9th deed to the challenger herself, after her boyfriend claims to throw it away. Zach unfolds the paper, and his blood runs cold upon reading that he must find Duncan Rhyme. Dan bursts out in laughter upon hearing it, certain that he'll fail since Duncan had long vanished. Amidst it all, Kyle, Meg, and Vincent arrive on the scene, intent on reclaiming the car. Before they can, Mullet steps forward and reveals that he is Duncan Rhyme. He declares the game is a hollow charade that only reminds him of how miserable he was during high school. Before walking away, he warns Zach that if he truly wants to win, he may have to stop playing by the rules. Motivated by his words, the teen snatches the final deed from Dan and hands it to Kyle, who proceeds to tear it to shreds and hurls it at the bully's face. Not long after, the siren and flashing lights cut through the scene. Officer Dills storms in and apprehends Zach for stealing a car. However, Vincent decides to drop his complaint and makes a deal with the policeman, setting the teen free. While Zach shoulders the weight of the dirty deeds, the rest of the West High students spend their night partying at a nearby house. Even the school nerd gets to have his moment with the popular girl he's always dreamed about. As they are wrapped up in their carefree night, their head jock is already plotting his next move to ruin their most anticipated school event. On the morning before homecoming, Dan pieces back together the 10th deed and enlists JD to carry it out, planning to frame Zach for revenge. As Vincent and the teen converse over breakfast, Jen comes rushing in. Frantically, she informs him of her now ex-boyfriend's plan. The moment he hears that Meg will get hurt, he bolts for the door. Seeing the urgency, the kind gentleman lends the teen his car. While this unfolds, JD crawls underneath the event's stage and sets up fireworks to detonate during the carnival, which they know Zach will be blamed for. Back on the road, Zach wastes no time and speeds off, alerting Officer Dill, who tails him all the way to school. Arriving at West High, the chase disrupts Mr. Fush's opening speech. Immediately, the teen jumps out of the car, shouting warnings of the incoming danger. He quickly rushes to Meg and drags her to a safer distance. Behind him, Officer Dill catches up to him and slams him in cuffs. Despite his efforts to explain, the policeman refuses to listen. A loud explosion erupts through JD's car, stunning everyone, including Dan, as this wasn't part of his plan. Shaken by the blast, Officer Dill leaves to handle the urgent matter, ordering his fellow policeman, Officer Bevins, to guard Zach. However, when his superior is out of sight, the other officer bitterly expresses his resentment toward his partner. Without hesitation, he takes the cuff off and instructs the teen to run. Grabbing the opportunity, Meg and Zach sprint, only to be stopped by Vincent and a group of men. It turns out that the man's crew had moved the fireworks from underneath the stage into JD's car. The teen thanks them and returns the man's car keys, but before he leaves, the kind gentleman decides to lend him the Ferrari once again to give them more time to escape. Grinning, Zach and Meg bid their goodbye and hop into the car. As they prepare to drive away from West High, they finally seal their feelings for one another through a passionate kiss.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.